Okay, here we go with topic 110. Technically, it's called East Africa Trade and Culture in the Swahili Coast, but that's kind of long, so let's just call it the Swahili Coast, and you'll see how trade and culture fits in. The learning objective is to explain how geographic, cultural, and political factors contributed to the rise and fall of the city states of the Swahili Coast. So let's start with the geography part, and then we'll come back to cultural and political factors. So the Swahili Coast is in East Africa and it borders the Indian Ocean. This puts it firmly in the Bantu language and culture zone, but it also connects it with Asia via ocean trade routes. The Arab world was the closest, and so trade between Arabs and Africans of the Swahili coast was the most impactful. But there were also traders from other parts of Asia, such as Persia, which we now call Iran, and India. We know that even the Chinese visited Africa in the 1400s, but they just took their giraffe and never came back. So it wasn't really an active trade relationship. Anyway, its proximity to the Indian Ocean is the geographic part of what made the Swahili coast an important trade location. And the trade between East Africa and the Arab world was large scale and pretty much constant. And so we see a lot of syncretic blending between Arab and African here. Even the name Swahili reflects this blending, as it is the Arabic word for coast. As you might guess, there was also a strong religious influence as Arabian traders brought their Muslim faith with them. Just as it did in the Sudanic empires of West Africa, Islam quickly grew and spread throughout the Swahili coast. Soon it was one of the major uniting characteristics of the people who lived there. The inhabitants of the Swahili coast were also united in their use of the Swahili language. Swahili is a Bantu language in its structure and grammar, but it includes a huge amount of Arabic vocabulary as words and names were shared during business transactions. The wealth generated by Indian Ocean trade led to the emergence of several powerful city states on the Swahili coast. A city state is an independent city with its own government and usually the farmland that surrounds it. One of the most prominent Swahili coast city states was Kilwa, located in what is now Tanzania. Sadly, the golden age of these East African trading cities was cut short by one of the first acts of European colonialism. See, Portuguese explorers had been creeping down Africa's Atlantic coast since 1415, and in 1488 they finally found a way around Africa. When the Portuguese saw the valuable trading locations of these East African cities, they made preparations to take them by force. In 1505, Portugal attacked Kilwa. The city was brutally sacked, and the Portuguese raised their flag and began building fortifications up and down the Swahili coast. This brutal attack marks the end of Swahili control over Indian Ocean trade and the beginning of the European menace that would ultimately devastate the African continent and its people.